My sleep is gone, the heart is full of sorrow. I can't believe how much I've let you down. I dread the pain that waits for me tomorrow, when my broken dreams are scattered on the ground. Please forgive me, please forgive me. I need your grace to make it through. So all I have is you, I'll let your mercy. Lord, I'll serve you until I die today. Help others find a way at your mercy. Please forgive me. I can't believe that God of earth and glory would take the time to care for one like me. But I read in the Bible that old story, how he pled for my forgiveness while he was dying on the tree. Please forgive me. I need your grace to make it through. 'Cause all I have is you, that's your mercy. Lord, I'll serve you until my dying day. Others find a way at your mercy. Please forgive me. I need your grace to make it through. All I have is you, I'm at your mercy. Lord, I'll serve you until my dying day. Help others find a way at your mercy. Please forgive me.
What did you get here? Good.
Giving me this opportunity. You know, not too many preachers are willing to give a guy a chance anymore, unfortunately. Pastor, we got the blessing.
Lord, we thank you for this man, and I ask you to anoint him in a special way right now. I pray for every heart that's here tonight, that heart be touched, and every one of us can cry out to you for help tonight. And then we can thank you for hearing and answering our prayers. Help Ruben right now. Amen.
You know, before we get started, I want to know if there's anybody that has a testimony. I haven't heard testimony service in a long time. And it's your time to get up and give the devil a whooping.
Well, I do. I'm telling you, 2 years ago, they bought my grave up there at the cemetery. I was in a wheelchair and on oxygen. But I want you to look and see what the Lord has done.
Amen.
I am out of the wheelchair, off of oxygen, and I shall not die, but live to declare the works of the Lord. Hallelujah.
Amen.
So the Lord is still the same yesterday, today, and forever, and He still heals today. And I give Him praise and glory for it.
Anyone else? No. All right. How many believe that this is the house of God?
Yes, yes.
I mean, we truly believe that we believe that this is the place that we come to worship and be blessed of God.
Oh, yeah.
Amen.
But unfortunately, the church has opened its doors to the world, but sadly, it's let the world in. Too many churches have gone away of the world to the world has changed the church instead of the church changing the world.
That's right.
You know, Brother Cliff last Wednesday night was talking about how he went to different churches and how what the attire was of what people was wearing in the church. I grew up in the church. I went to church with my grandma. And let me tell you something. You know, I wore, the reason why I wear shirts and ties and this and that, because I believe to wear better in his house than my house. This is his house.
Yes.
And if it's not, then there's something wrong. But I want to thank God for giving me this opportunity. Because you know what? There's not a whole lot of pastors like Brother Spradlin anymore that preach thus saith the word.
Amen.
You know, in the denominations, in a lot of them, as a pastor of a church, you can call and have your messages sent to you. You don't even have to study the word anymore. But I was brought up to respect the house of God. Psalms 89:7 says, God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be a reverence of all them that are about. We need to reverence Him. We need to realize that when we come to this place, it's not for ourselves, but it's to worship Him.
Yeah.
Leviticus 19:13 says that ye shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. If you want to turn to Hebrews chapter 12. We'll start at verse 23. To the general assembly and church of the firstborn which are written in heaven, and to God the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect, and to Jesus the mediator. Aren't you glad that we have Jesus as our mediator?
Amen.
You know, I've got a song by Marty Rayburn that says, take Jesus as your lawyer, or you'll face that judge alone. And to Jesus the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of the sprinkling that speaketh better things than Abel. See that you refuse not him that speaketh, for if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. Whose voice then shook the earth. But now we have promised, saying, yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And this word, yet once more, signifieth the removing of those things that are shaken, as of the things that are made, that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Aren't you glad that we cannot be shaken?
That's right. Amen.
And as if we are built our house on the rock, as the word says. Wherefore, we receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. You know, like I said, I grew up in the church. I remember my grandma taking me. I remember, not to embarrass my dad, but I remember them drinking and stuff like that, you know. And I'm not to say that I'm any better, because God knows that I did my share of drugs. I did my share of drinking. I killed a fifth of Jack Daniels a day. And go through an ounce of weed a week. So I've been there. Done it, tried it, always come back. I was called to preach when I was 14 years old. I'm 40. There's something wrong with that. One of the hardest things my grandma ever said to me is, do you know how many souls are dying and going to hell because you aren't doing what God has called you to do?
Oh, Lord.
My own grandma. I tell you what, it's time for preachers to stand up and preach, thus saith the Lord. So I tell you what, I would be in fear to get up here and preach anything that's not in that book. And I tell you what, I've said it before, if I can't find it in here, I won't say nothing about it. There's lots of things that you hear through the years, and a lot of it's man sayings, but you cannot find it in this word. We need to get back to the time of old, I believe. I miss the old church. I miss the days of revival. I miss the days that when we would come to church, expecting. But unfortunately, we come to church expecting it to be the same. We expect it to start at this time. We expect it to end at this time. And God forbid if it ain't over at 12 o'clock. I tell you what, I go till the Spirit says stop. I tell you that right now.
Amen.
If it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. You know, we all go to the movies and we'll sit there for 2 hours and won't complain. We'll go watch our football games and won't say a word. But I tell you what, when we come to the house of God, why is there so much complaining going on?
Come on now.
2 Timothy chapter 4. Starting verse 1. I charge ye therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. You know, too many preachers don't want that long suffering part. You know, I came to this church before Spradlin got it. I walked out the door. There was too much of me and no God. You know, and that's what I like about this church, and I think that's why we always come back to this church. Don't get me wrong. Some of you probably think I'm new, but Spradlin knows it. We used to travel to Cottage Grove every week just so we could go here and preach. Because I hunger for the Word of God. But nobody's feeding the Word. Nobody wants to give meat anymore. They still want to give the baby food. Give me some water, please. Verse 3. For the time will come. They will not endure sound doctrine. But after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions. Do the work of an evangelist. Make full proof of thy ministry. That's to all of us. We all have a ministry.
Yes.
Every one of us.
Amen.
You know, my mom's favorite song before she passed was I've Got a Mansion Just Over the Hilltop. And every time I hear it, I see her cry. You know? When if you even mention how Jesus went to the cross, the thought of to her, she would bawl like a baby. God had given her a soft heart. My son right here, come here, stand up. Come here. 10 years old. At his age, my mom, at his age, my mom had cirrhosis of the liver. She was an alcoholic. Guy that Dad worked with He used to call him Speedy. He swore that he could hang about 4 houses over the weekend. His wife and the church and some of the other people came and they prayed for Mom. Not long after that, my mom, she gave her heart to God.
Yeah.
Not long after that, my dad did.
Praise God. That's something.
And I will never forget this as long as I live. I was younger than him at the time. Mom and Dad was still drinking. I would always go to stay the night at my grandma's house. And I would go and I would just, spend the night with her, and then we'd go to church, and we'd come home to church, and she'd fix me a tuna sandwich, and, it was just the same thing every Sunday. And I loved it. I enjoyed it. I loved just going to Sunday school. I enjoyed it. I'll never forget one time, it was in the evening time, and I just happened to turn around and I see my mom and dad come into the back. And, at this church here, it was nothing to have a couple hundred people. Nothing. And we were sitting on the left-hand side, probably about, 7 or 8 rows back. And of course, it was the time that we should have prayer requests, which you don't hear anymore. And I stood up, and I was so little, I had to stand up on the seat. My grandma says, "Get out, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm not getting down." I said, "I've got a prayer request." Didn't know what it meant. I just knew what you're supposed to be. And I kid you not, my dad was there. He started in about the first row, and he would go like this, down, 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 down. Every time. He would start there, and whoever was standing up would say their prayer request, they'd sit down, he'd start over here. He started about 1, 2, by the first row. After that, it's like God opened the people. And there I stand. Not a clue in the world what it even meant. But I said, I want to pray that my mom and dad is saved. Well, you talk about tears running down my mom's face. And I tell you what, I thank God that He saved my parents.
Amen. Amen.
Even when I was living in sin, they didn't sit there and boo me. They didn't sit there and preach to me. They didn't sit there and yap and whatever. They prayed for me and they loved me. Now, if you look in verse 3, it says, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine." It's right now. Now is that time. "But after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itchy ears."
Amen.
I don't want to go to a church where I'm okay, you're okay, everybody's okay. Okay people don't make it to heaven. I said, okay people don't make it to heaven.
Amen.
You better read this Bible right here. You ain't on fire. You ain't going.
That's right.
He'd spew you out. Right now, there's so many preachers out there. Trust me, I've seen them. I've walked to their doors and walked right back out. It's more of a get-together than anything else. All it really seems to be is just a social gathering. And that's pretty much all it amounts to. But there's no "thus saith the Lord" anymore. There's no conviction anymore in those churches. And the reason why there's not is because the pastors are sitting there telling you what you want to hear. God forbid they say anything that offends the people. Dwight Thompson talks about when he was a young man. Anybody knows me knows that I love Dwight Thompson. He's my favorite preacher. I love to hear him preach. Of course, Brother Stadman's too.
Amen.
But he tells the story of when he was a young man, about 5 years. And they had this little deal that they would do every service. They'd walk in, just a little parade that would go right on in, and he would follow. He had his Bible and everything in his hand. And this lady standing there had a cane. And she wanted his attention. He wouldn't give it to her. He didn't want to disrupt the service, Figured he'd talk to her later. She said, forget that. She grabbed his arm, his Bible went flying. She said, Sonny, are you the evangelist? He said, yeah. Said, Sonny, do you know how to pray? I said, yes, ma'am. I know how to pray. About 3 or 4 nights he preaches and everything else. Same thing, every service, walk through, there goes the parade. There stands that woman again with that cane. She grabs his arm again. Says, son, I thought you said you knew how to pray. And before he could even spit anything out to even defend himself, he says, well, she says, it's one of two things. She says, either you don't know how to pray or you're not praying. So he goes on to tell the story that she told him, now after church, you're not going to go eat. She goes, all you preachers want to do is preach and eat. She says, after church, you're going to sit here and you're going to come back and we're going to pray. There's about 12 other elderly ladies sitting there. And they had the chair for him right there in the middle. And she smacked that chair and jumped up there like a trained dog. And they prayed, and they prayed, and they prayed, and they prayed. And God still really wasn't moving. And they kept praying, and they kept praying, and they kept praying. And she would bring in great big bottles of oil. And she says, Sunday's the day, Sonny, Sunday's the day. Sunday, God is going to move. And they decided to anoint the pews. And, you know, as we all do, he got this little dab of oil, and he started dabbing it on the pews. And she goes, not like that, Sonny. He started mopping the pews. Well, Sunday came, and the people were mad. It was just a convenience church. There was a man in the church that had all of the people so wrapped around his little finger that they followed him instead of the Word of God or even the pastor. Anyways, Dwight goes on to say that when Sunday came, he was so nervous he couldn't stand it. No, he knows. I know what that feels like. It's hard for me to get up here in front of people. I would rather take a nap in school than get up in front of people. But yet God calls those whom He wants. He chose me. Well, Sunday came. He had a microphone like this, and he had it poured, and he was walking back and forth, and he was praying, and he was talking about King David, how he sent the man out to die so he could have the wife. And he said, there's a man in this church. You've ruled this church for too many years. And like King David, the judgment has come to your door, and thou art the man. He said when he opened his eyes, his finger was about 3 inches away from this man. He said the man stood up and said, oh my God, judgment has called me. It has found me. He fell right on his face. God knocked him out. He went to go help him. God said, no, he's mine. The pastor said that he felt the same thing. He said, no, he's mine. As he began to sit there and pray and everything else and this and that, God came back into his heart, came back into his life. Come to find out, in that church, like I said, all it was just a social church. The pastor said of the church, he says, most of the congregation has never heard me preach. He says they'll come to their Sunday schools and they'll leave. Well, that Sunday, Mama, the old lady, she decided she was going to lock all the Sunday school doors. And I'll tell you what, you talk about panic and people being mad. There were so many mad people in the church that they went and told the pastor, says, you have them doors unlocked in a minute, or we want your resignation on our desk. People were ruling the church instead of God. He says, well, if it's my resignation you want, it's that, then you'll have it. But I'm not unlocking. They anointed the doorknob, they anointed the whole church. After it was all said and done, after God had gotten a hold of the man and some of the people that decided that they were going to go and kind of conspire against the pastor on how to get rid of him, they decided to go into this one room only. And it was the only room that the lady had left open. And that was the room that they'd been praying in the whole time. And the people that went in there to conspire against the pastor, each one of them that went into that room, the power of God hit them, and they all fell. And, you know, God started to have his way in that church. But unfortunately, we live in times now where the pastors are more worried about what the people want. They don't care what the church wants. And I'm glad that we have a pastor that wants what God wants. He wants a move of God.
Amen.
I remember as a teenager, and me and my wife, we've known each other since we was 15 years old. And I'll tell you what, we were, you know, as usual teenagers, we sit back there and giggle and laugh and everything else and yada yada. It was nothing for that pastor of that church to sit up there, call your name in front of everybody and tell you need to be quiet. Boy, you talk about a look from your mom and dad. And you knew you was going to get it when you got home. But too many pastors don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to offend anybody. Well, I'm not here to offend anybody. But I stand before one and greater than all of us. And I want to hear, well done. Because judgment is coming. And woe to the pastors that aren't saying, thus saith the Lord. Jeremiah chapter 23. Starting verse 1. And this is just so in case you don't believe me. Woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, saith the Lord. Therefore thus saith the Lord God of Israel, against the pastors that feed my people. Ye have scattered my flock, and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doing, saith the Lord. And I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all countries, whither I have driven them, and will bring them again to their fold. And they shall be fruitful and increase. I will set up shepherds over them, which shall feed them, and shall fear no more, nor be dismayed. Neither shall they be lacking, saith the Lord. You know, like I said, you know, I love to hear preachers. But, you know, unfortunately, even the ones that started off preaching on TV now have talk shows. I want to talk show. I'll watch Dr. Phil. I feel that it's time that we just kind of got back to the basics. I enjoy the music. I really do. One of the things that when we were trying to find churches before we heard about Sprouts out in Cottage Grove was, what about the music? Do y'all sing good gospel music, or do you do the new wave stuff? I'm 40 years old, like it or lump it. I do not believe in Christian rock. Because there's got to be a difference between the church and the world. But yet there's no difference. They've all got the tattoos. I sit there and ask my 18-year-old daughter, just flip through channels, and ask her, so what's the difference? Is this a Christian band or not a Christian band? And unless she knew them, she couldn't tell the difference. They all had the tattoos, they all had the earrings. And when I was living in sin, God was speaking to me one night. And I was putting so much dope up my nose I couldn't see straight. You know, I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to get up here and say what I had done because God delivered me from it.
Hallelujah.
And to Him be the glory.
Amen.
I was doing a lot of coke, a lot of crack. staying up all night, running to Reno, whatever. Well, we decided we were going to move to Idaho because of work. I hung sheetrock for 17 years till I got hurt. We were going to move to Idaho because of work. I had to stay back because I had a DUI. I had to finish my drunk driving school so that I could get my driver's license back. Well, I'm thinking, cool. Now I don't have to worry about trying to play it off in front of mom and dad. I can kick back and do what I want. Well, mom and dad made arrangements for me to stay with the pastor. Thanks, Dad. And I'm still thinking, well, it's on his property, but I'm still in my own little room, you know. I can still do my own thing. Come and go as I please. I did anyways, but, you know, still, you don't want your parents to know. I don't care how old you are. You know, even my uncles, as heroin addicts, they still didn't want my grandma to know that they were shooting up, even though she knew. It's an you know, you feel embarrassed. Well, I mean, God was moving in that service. And I could feel it. And I tell you what, there's probably still indentations on the back of that seat from where I grabbed it so hard that night. I said, I ain't going there. But before I even did that, I had earrings in my ears, you know, and didn't care if y'all saw the tattoos. It's like I felt God's just dealing with me. And one of the first things that I did was I took the earrings out. And you may agree with me, you may not. But I have seen the difference from what the church was and what it is. There's got to be a difference. Oh, well, you know, it's for the young people. Well, the same thing is good today as it was yesterday. And the day before, and the day before. Jesus touched me. It wasn't the rock concerts of so-called Christian groups. Because in all honesty, the whole point of music is to worship God. And yet I sit and watch them on TV, just watching, flipping through channels. And they're sitting there jumping up and down, doing the same thing that they do at an Ozzy Osbourne concert, and ask me if I know, because I went and seen Ozzy. No difference in the rock concerts than in the so-called Christian concerts. Jeremiah 23. When it's talking about the pastors that destroy, I honestly and truly believe that he's talking about now. There's so many preachers and pastors and teachers that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like I said, you can get what you want on the internet. I can get ordained on a computer. I give you my little plaque and credentials and put it up there. I was called of God, not by man. It's time we stand up for God. Let me tell you something, church. Judgment ain't going to start with the people out there. It's going to start right in here. 1 Peter 4:17. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. I had someone ask me one time, you know, are you going to be one of those hellfire and brimstone preachers? How are you going to be a hellfire and brimstone preacher if there's no sinners in the church anymore? There's not. And the reason why there's not, because there's nothing really drawing them. Trust me, the world watches us. You don't believe me? It's right here in this book. It says the wicked watches the righteous. It says, for the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first began at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and his sinner appear? Wherefore let them that suffer according to the will of God commit the keeping of their souls to him in well doing, as unto a faithful Creator. It starts right here in this church. It starts right here with us. It starts with him, it starts with you, it starts with me. I know what some of you are probably thinking. Well, I see you sit back there and you don't praise God. Now, what are you doing up there preaching? Let me tell you something. Like I said, I was called to preach when I was 14 years old. And I wish to God I could say that I preached throughout the whole time. And off and on I have. Mostly haven't. And the devil has had me so bound and ashamed what I didn't do. Because trust me, church, it's just as much a sin as what you're not doing as it is what you're doing. Amen. Like I said, when my grandma said, you know how many souls are going to hell because you're not doing it? How many souls are going to hell because you're not doing it? This church is not doing it. This is a good-sized church. And this is a little town. And there's really no reason why these chairs aren't filled, except we're just not doing our part. It only takes one to be obedient unto God. Just one. And it can't always be the pastor. Every service, I honestly believe that God will deal with someone that will open up the service to get moved and on fire for God. I remember the days of when the song leaders, they would sit and they would pray just as much as the pastor would to say, God, what should I sing? Because the song set the mood for the church. I remember as a kid, I seen Dwight Thompson and Shambach, and not on TV only, but, they'd come through Fresno. And, and then I've been to the tent meetings, not the one that was here, I came to this one too. But as a kid, I went to the tent meetings that you no longer see. Because, when God says go, you go. And if the church won't invite you, then you go anyway. You go get a tent and you go. Now you put up a tent and think a circus is in town. And unfortunately, the sad part is that half of these services anymore is nothing but a circus. Boy, it's quiet. But like I said, I've got one that I've got to stand before. I miss the elders in the church. I remember as a kid, I remember the head poppers with the hairdo that went up to here, and the glory of God and the Holy Ghost would start to fall and start, glory, glory, like that. I miss those days. You're only 40. I've seen it. I miss it. And there's something lacking today if it's still not here. What is the difference between then and today? We start to allow the world to come in. And instead of getting them saved, we allow the world to come in and sit down and take a seat. Because trust me, the devil knows the word just as much as God does. He even used the word to try to tempt Jesus. But I miss the elders of the church. So many of the churches want the elders just to kind of sit back and be quiet. You don't do nothing no more. But if you look in chapter 5, it says, the elders which are among you I exhort, who am also an elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of God which is among you, taking oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willing, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. How many know Brother Adams? I know you know Brother Adams, not before he went on to be with the Lord. You know, I'd go to a church over there on Marshall Street when it was Bill and Kathy. And if you know Bill and Kathy, they need your prayer. I love that man. I really do with all my heart. And he would help me, and he actually stayed in the church longer than he should, just because he knew that certain people wouldn't give me an opportunity to stand up here. I ain't gonna say names, but the one he took over after he left, he went to him first before he took over the church and said, I got a young man, I'm using him, will you use him? He says, no, I got everybody I need. I'm not gonna say what happened to him. You know, brother and sister Dawson will always be special to me, along as others, Brother Spradlin, Sister Gil White, you know, Brother Daniels down there in Elk Road, Brother Shirley in Fresno, Brother Jim in Rio Linda, Brother Smith. You know, when I was called at 14, a man came up and he says, you've got a very calling in your life, but I ain't going to tell you what it is, because if I tell you what it is, you'll run from it. Well, I found out something about God. He ain't going to tell you nothing through man that he hasn't already told you himself.
Amen.
And that's why we're to watch out for the false prophets that are in these last days. I'll close. Try to. Like I said, it only takes one to be obedient. I'll never forget at Brother Daniel's church in El Grove, California, on a Wednesday like this, but it was actually youth night. And they were praying for this girl to get filled with the Holy Ghost. And I miss those days too, when you come down before God, the altar, and everybody, and pray and pray and pray until you received it. You didn't leave. You didn't look at your watch and say, well, I've got 5 minutes and I'm out of here, so you better hurry. God kept telling me, so I want you to go pray for her. I want you. But God, look up there. There's the elders, there's the pastor's wife. They're up there. I want you to go up there and do it. No, one else. Well, finally, I gave in. When I gave in, there was like 2 steps that came up. I snuck around to the top and I sat down. I sat far away. I said, okay, I pray, Lord, right now in the name of Jesus. And I said, lay my hands on her. God, feel her just like that.
Wow.
Obedience. And I tell you what, that's excited me so much. I started praying for all the rest of the young people in this church. And almost every one of them got filled with the Holy Ghost. One. It only takes one. 1 Samuel 15:22 says, obedience is greater than sacrifice. Romans 5:18 says, for as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one shall many be righteous. It's time for obedience in the church. I don't care if you're the youngest or the oldest, we need obedience. Thank you, baby. Revival You know, unfortunately, like I said, we put God on a time. And like I said earlier, we want God to move. We want Him to come and touch us. We want healing. We want revival. We want. As long as it's within our time frame. You know, I heard a man preaching today about pretty much the same thing. And he was talking about, you know, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And he was saying something, you know, well, God forbid, we're not out here by 12 because, you know what, we're going skiing after service today. And we're going to be out there for about 4 or 5 hours. You give 4 or 5 hours to the boat. You can't give an hour and a half to God. And I'm right there with you. We all got something like that. Mine's television. I can sit there like this all day and just be glued to it. It's my escape. But unfortunately, revival is not going to start until we become obedient. It's going to start in the church, but we've got to be obedient. And I tell you something. It says we, but I'm going to start with I. Better start being obedient. In Deuteronomy 11:28 says, we are cursed if we will not obey the commandments of the Lord. I don't want to be cursed. I want to be blessed of God. I want healing of God. I want deliverance of God. First Samuel 12 and 15. But if we will not obey the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then shall the hand of the Lord be against you as your fathers. And like I said, it's going to start right here. It's going to start right here. You know, I know the pastor's got a view of building a bigger church over there. That church over there is never going to be over there until we as a body, we're a body. I can't make my arm do this unless my shoulder does this and this and this. We are like that. We're a body.
Amen.
I can't go forwards and backwards at the same time. It'd be kind of cool. I can't do it. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day.
Oh,
I thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity to speak forth your word. And Lord, I ask that your word go forth and that it would speak to all of our hearts, especially mine. Help me, Father, to be obedient. Help me to set the service for you. Help me to be strong. Help guide and lead us, Lord. And I'll pray and ask you, Lord Jesus, that you would touch our hearts, touch our minds, touch our souls. Speak to us. In the name of Jesus, amen. If anybody needs prayer, the pastor will come up and we pray.